Joining us now from the great state of Arkansas is Senator Tom Cotton. I imagine you must feel a little bit vindicated. I want to talk really quickly about this, report that's coming out tomorrow from the WHO. We're expecting for it to say that COVID came from an animal and not from the lab. But we know that the investigators were not given full access and that they weren't even allowed to speak to the scientists without communist government minders with them. So is this report just a big joke?
Hey, Rachel, thanks for having me on. Yeah, the report is a joke. I mean, these so-called investigators did not have access to scientists. They did not have access to evidence. They basically went to Wuhan and were put in a conference room and given some coffee and donuts and a few PowerPoint slides. Chinese communists told them nothing to see here, so they walked away and said, nope, there's nothing to see here. But as even some of these liberal media outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post have acknowledged after calling me a conspiracy theorist a year ago, there are real serious questions about the origins of this virus. Now, to be precise, last year, I didn't say that the Chinese communists had created this virus or invented it. I said that they have a long and documented history of sloppy laboratory practices. Our diplomats went to this lab in 2018 and expressed their concerns in cables back to Washington, D.C. I still believe that all of the best evidence that we have, circumstantial to be sure, but still the best evidence, suggests that this virus originated from an accidental breach in those Wuhan labs.
So one of the best pieces of evidence we have that they were hiding something is that they were actually punishing or even disappearing the whistleblowers. I mean, shouldn't that have been the best clue for the media and for those who were mocking you?
That's a very good indicator, Rachel. That's just one piece of evidence that we have that says this virus, although it may have come from an animal, most likely came from an accidental breach in those laboratories. Their claims that it started in a wet market were disproven from the earliest days of this virus. Their refusal to let American or international scientists into Wuhan in the early days of this virus, to speak to scientists in the early days, all suggest they were trying to cover something up.
Senator Cotton, Secretary of State Blinken says that we shouldn't worry about punishing China for all the lies and even the spread of COVID, that we should just look forward. He says we should focus on building a stronger system. What do you say?
Tens of millions of Americans have had their lives upended over the last year, Rachel. They've lost jobs. Their businesses have closed. They've lost loved ones. I don't think those Americans want to simply turn the page and let bygones be bygones. We need to get to the bottom of what happened in Wuhan and how the Chinese communists unleashed this plague on the world, and we need to hold them accountable, both directly through measures like my legislation that would open the federal courts to lawsuits against the Chinese communists, but also indirectly by standing up to their aggression against our country and our allies, or their efforts to steal our jobs and steal our property. Both directly and indirectly, China needs to pay.
In a practical sense, though, can we even get to the bottom of it? Hasn't there just been so much time that has passed that they've been able to just hide the evidence, even if we were able to talk to the scientists without the government minders, for example?
Yeah, Rachel, I believe that you're right, that the evidence that might have existed that it fully explained the origins of this virus has probably been destroyed in China. I think the only way we'll ever know conclusively is if there's a whistleblower that emerges one day from China. I hope that's the case. I hope we get to the bottom of what happened here. But whatever happened, we know that China is responsible for unleashing this plague on the world. We shouldn't just turn the page the way the Biden administration wants to. We should hold them to account.
We know that there's been some serious conflicts of interest with Peter Dozek, who was interviewed as well on 60 Minutes, and also his connection with Dr. Fauci. Will we ever get any investigations into that?
Well, I think it's important to review all of the relationships and all of the work that American scientists and American institutions did in Wuhan and did with China. We don't want to prejudge them, but we do want to make sure that we have total and complete transparency for the American people in the origins and the development of the last year of the worst pandemic in a century, Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite scary. And, you were just down at the border, by the way, and I want to ask you, because Dr. Fauci's been talking about this new strain, this new variant of COVID that is, very dangerous. It appears to be attacking younger kids, healthy people. Very scary situation. We know that people from Latin America are coming through our southern border, even from Brazil. So should Dr. Fauci be talking about the border and what that impact is on COVID and our recovery? I mean, really, it's happening just as we're starting to get a little hope here.
Yeah, of course, it's a very dangerous situation on our border, Rachel. It's not just that we've opened our borders and invited anyone to come here with a child. They'll be let in to live basically for the rest of their lives without ever going back. But we do risk introducing the coronavirus and its new variants at the border and then ultimately around the country. You know, when we were in one of these facilities, they had teenage boys separated on an outdoor field in two groups of about 50, and one was the coronavirus positive group. The other one was the negative group. Well, they had just been packed into rooms a few hours earlier with each other. Yet those boys, just like so many other migrants who have tested positive for the coronavirus, are still being put on planes and trains and buses and sent all around the country.
Yeah, it's outrageous and definitely something that I think Dr. Fauci should weigh in on. Senator Cotton, such a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel.